Oh, no. He's hearing, but he couldn't.
Hello, my name is Gabriela Graffinis, and I'm the chair of the Values Committee in Canadian Association for the Club of Rome. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us online and in person. The weather is not the best here in Ottawa, and the news not always positive. As a matter of fact, I'm sure many of us felt like we have been caught in a whirlwind of uncertainty and confusion these days. However, here we are gathered to listen to each other's perspectives in hope of understanding and finding pathways for a better and safer future, maybe. And now for a bit of admin information. For our friends on Zoom Room, please do use the chat for your questions or remarks. And the ones present in the room, I guess, will just raise our hands, or we know how to do that. And we'll give opportunities to each one of you to participate in the discussion. We will start our panelists' introductory remarks, 10 to 15 minutes each, followed by everyone's contribution. For our friends, so as it happens, one of our panelists, John Verdun, he succumbed to a bit of cold, and he won't be here. We will miss his creative thinking and foresight, but we will read a few paragraphs from his presentations. The other panelists are Paul Maillet, a peace practitioner and leader of the Center for Peace Building, Lalis Gunaratne, a parent, an entrepreneur, an educator, weaving together Eastern, Western, and Aboriginal philosophies for his work based on lifelong mindfulness practice as a way to stay grounded through the volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And Peter McKinnon, Senior Research Associate and Project Executive Director, Smart Connected Vehicles Innovation Center, and a Foresight Professional. These are just a few of their, a little bit of their bio. In choosing today's topic, an ecology of artificial intelligence, a Frankenstein moment, we wanted to explore together with you AI's role in our lives now and in the future. Paul, would you kindly start your presentation?
Okay, thank you. Hello, let's see if I can get this one. Hope ethics in artificial intelligence. The reason for my presentation, and I do organizational ethics and peace services, is that I'm doing a project in University of Montreal with their IT organization or faculty, and they are primarily in the development mode for AI. And one of the things that they're missing in the AI puzzle is the issue of ethics, which is, even though it's a huge discussion going on now and all sorts of papers in every direction, they have to get down to the level of how do we practically do this in the coding, and how does it actually have a practical outcome. So I was asked to look at that in terms of ethics. So I assume everybody's read Shelley's book, prior reading there for this session here. And it's a story of creation that goes terribly wrong. And in the reviews, it really is centered around the abdication of familial responsibility. In other words, we created something, but in the Frankenstein case, they did not take responsibility either for the moral or social development of Frankenstein's creation. And it was shunned and not treated very well. And on its own, it defaulted to tragedy, actually, and violence. So there is something about this that says if we've created something, what responsibilities do we have with regards to this creation? And what responsibilities in terms of ethics? Hello, come on in. So the question is this a new consciousness to start with? There's a difference between consciousness and intelligence. So there's a separation. And we're in a position where we can't even understand our own consciousness. And here we are trying to understand an AI consciousness. And it appears that within AI, what we have is something more than a computer and something less than a human. So we're in this muddy place where we have to find our way. And we are in the process of transitioning from a transactional relationship in a computer, with just transaction, to something that's more relational in terms of a computer's AI's programming ability to create original material, for example, and thoughts. So the current trends are there's all sorts of conventions, resolutions, codes, and standards, and it's becoming kind of endless. In 2004, the Council of Europe passed a treaty on artificial intelligence, human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. So they have entered the ethics domain. They're edging in there, but they're very difficult to implement, and of course, even more difficult to enforce. So the vacuum in all this is what are the ethics practices and direct implementation applications? And I would like to just go through that actually quite briefly. So what is intelligence anyway? And this is just stuff from the internet. You know, it's a mental quality or some quality that has abilities to learn from experience, new situations, abstract concepts, use knowledge. The keys are creativity and problem solving, which, for example, a scientific calculator might do for you, but an AI will get into creative and original thought. To solve complex problems, an AI has a particular computer system or machine that has some qualities of the human brain. So we're going to look at what are they and what kind of relationship can we have with these. So smarter is not just a bigger and better calculator. Because we know that AI is going to be in the domain of what's called polymorph. In other words, it can be expert in all sorts of endless professions and fields, whereas we as a human being can. You're an engineer, but it's going to be difficult to be a medical doctor or a neurosurgeon or an economist or anything. It has the capacity to bring all of that together and look for patterns and then provide responses in that. However, intelligence and consciousness, it has. I mean, there are two kinds of consciousness, objective consciousness and subjective consciousness. The computer and the AI can do the objective stuff really easy. So we can all do that. What color of sweater is he wearing? It's purple, and everyone would get the same answer. But there is the subjective components, which they call qualia in the programming world, which might say, you like that purple sweater. So you're trying to form some sort of subjective opinion. You love this person, whatever. And the computer would have a difficult time, or at least AI is kind of shut out of that domain. So what we have is objective and subjective components, and the computer AI has this objective awareness going on. And then it has to make decisions on the basis of that. So it's called quality anyway. So what are we looking at? We're looking at fear or beneficence, good stuff, or super intelligence. You know, of course, it promises to do great things in science, and that it's in military and security and polymath and all that kind of thing. It's going to give you high efficiency and speed and accuracy beyond what possibly the human brain can do. These large language models that they have now, just massive. However, on the fear part, as the revolution in military affairs, which happens periodically in history, marches on, AI can be neither good nor evil, but it's going to have consequences. It's going to be AI is going to be there, and how we use it and what prompts and objectives we give this AI is going to have consequences. So we're now on the cusp of autonomous weapons that have moral content embedded in the decision outcomes. So it's going to have that kind of content now. So the biggest question is, in an ethics, how does an AI decide anything in a sense? So let's look at it from the three kinds of AI that there are. The basic AI now is called generative AI. It starts with some prompt, some objective, some input that it can process. And it returns original or new content in response to this. So it uses machine learning, massive pools of information, patterns learned from data sets, creates content, and then it's all in response to a prompt. So it creates new content by predicting what could come next in the pattern. And then this in turn becomes either assistive or angelic. Assistive AI is designed just to help you as a human being complete a task. This helps users make informed decisions. The user is in complete control, and the AI simply enhances human performance. We're just better at that. Agentic AI, however, is autonomous AI, from the word agency, and it's built to perform tasks on behalf of the user, but in an autonomous role, executing tasks with next to no intervention and just, run this factory. Runs it or on what we call these call systems. It would answer the phone and AI could be there and it could have a conversation about all sorts of things. So it not only assists, but acts as the primary executor of the task. So that's the difference between the two kinds of AI. Okay, so what about ethics? So ethics is in the practical sense, it's not about knowing what is right. Anyone can do that, computers. It's not even about choosing what is right. It's about doing what is right. It's getting into the action component. Ethics is a normative philosophy. Values establish what we value, and ethics is what one ought not to do with this. So ethics in humans and AI is about one thing and one thing only, and that's ethical decision making. You're going to put ethics in there. All you want out of that is the output that's ethical. We're going to have some problems with how each of us gets there. Basically, ethical decision making is complex balancing of all sorts of things. Ethical awareness, ethical reasoning, ethical action, and you balance the rules and the laws. What do they require? Consequences, utilitarianism. How do I minimize bad ones, maximize good ones? The care of others. Are humanitarian issues or people issues important in this decision? And then, of course, the values. What values are important? Honesty, respect, whatever. So you've got to balance all of these things. And how can we design AI to reflect these human values and ethics? So these are our ethics and how we do it. And we're going to get at it from a certain way. But obviously, the AI has got to come at it from a different way. What we do is in ethics is we start with the values and we go towards the action, the outcome. In AI, you're going to have to start with the outcome and reverse engineer it back to the values, because values is a what do we call it? A subjective consciousness. Do I love this person or something like this? And the AI isn't going to be able to say, well, I think that's better than that, for purely emotional reasons. Okay, so traditional ethics architecture around the human element and embedded in government. So we need some architecture in governments and human element. Then we need specific to AI architecture for users, developers, and maintainers. Then we need ethics in the AI life cycle, from design, testing, maintenance, usage to obsolescence, and an embedded ethics architecture directly into the code of the AI. What is the technical term in there is weights. When you design these programs, you create these things, subroutines that are called weights, which they give in decision with prominence. So it appears that a agentic AI program with enough duty cycle, this is another factor, original outcomes, it creates bias and can be written in the domain of the ethics. All right. So you're going to have, if it's an open AI, you're looking at the entire internet, and that's it's poison. I call it a poisoned well with regards to AI. It's got everything in there, and poor AI is going to give you some information based on some patterns in there, and it can go down the wrong rabbit hole quite easily. So decisions and outcomes that have ethical content within right and wrong, harm, beneficence, or criminality, has to somehow factor into programming. So the duty cycles, because an AI program one day is not going to be the same as the AI program a month from now, because it's going to be running around all sorts of different data sets, whether they're curated or not. It's going to create that entity, let's call it that way, for lack of a better word, that's going to be different from the next AI program, which is exactly the same basic coding, because they're going to have duty cycles that create biases and things that they learn. Machine learning learns from itself. It's going to learn from mistakes, harm, whatever. What if you ask an AI to, how do I rob a bank? And it gets into those sorts of data sets without having any sort of weights or filters or whatever. It's saying, you can't ask me that or have me advise you. Okay, so there's what would happen. So the engine of AI ethics. The reality is that humans, we ignore and we violate expectations and disobey laws and ethical norms all the time. So we are not entering into a new universe of we can get ethics to be perfectly good. We're going to say it's going to have some human characteristics to it. Humans are driven by survival, fear, power, happiness, reason, emotion, and capable of harm. AI is going to be driven by user prompts, objectives, learned experience. It's going to have quantum computing capacities, robotics, polymaths, we talked about big data, and internet, and the internet. This is going to be some formidable capacity with all sorts of possibilities. So if the internet is a poisoned well, this can contribute to, or the data set that you're giving it, can contribute to an AI doing harm. Rogue AI, for example, it has no empathy because that's in the subjective consciousness state. It's been shown now to lie, hallucinate, have a racist bias, pick that up, and security concerns. You can give away your trade secrets if somebody gets into a conversation with it. So there we are. Now we have to train this AI. Can an AI evolve or be trained to recognize an ethical dilemma, apply ethical reasoning, and refuse to act unethically? Can the AI just say, I cannot answer that? This question is illegal in terms of national or international law. But this puts the onus on the user. The user is going to have to adopt a language that's very, very clear. If I'm a military AI, send this little drone over there. You've got to say, it's got this military objective in accordance with international humanitarian law. You've got to make sure that the right filters are in place there. Or otherwise, it's like normal human being when the officer says, get rid of the prisoner. Well, this is open to everything from war crimes to whatever, taking the prisoner. So it's a question of weights in programming. And the weights of some kinds of obedience to rules and laws, consequences, care of others, organizational values. And then the question is, can the users, developers, and maintainers test for an ethical bias? In other words, let's assume you're an AI program. Can I bring you in a month and give you a bunch of scenarios that shows that you're going to apply the rules and consequences and ethics correctly? And if all of a sudden I see these biases creeping in that are going to be harmful or destructive or whatever, I don't know, reboot it or put in patches or whatever computing system can do in that regard. So there's going to have to be a real maintenance of these kinds of things in order to avoid any going wrong. I'm running out of time, right? Okay, I'm just about done. This last time. So my question, the provocative question to this group is AI super intelligence even the right question? Just because it can do polymath and access the entire internet and all the books we've ever been written, or is it really a question of a new human superpower, like the liberation of atomic energy? When we liberated atomic energy, humans became different in a sense. Even something simple as a person who's going to fly an airplane is now a synergy between a human being and a machine that is one. They're flying the airplane around, sort of thing. So when we interact with AI, that AI will become part of us, similar to this airplane, And now we are bigger in a sense. So rather than the fear of superintelligence taking over and deciding human rights, it's not worth anything or going rogue or anything like this. Maybe we've got to look at both sides of this question. So that's all I wanted to say. Is this is part of a 40-page paper I'm writing for this place. Thank you.
Thanks very much,
Yeah.
Paul. Appreciate it. That was very, very interesting. I hope everybody enjoyed that, and we'll have lots to discuss about it. We won't take questions right now. We will go into the next short introductory presentation from Lali, and then we will be Peter McKinnon, and after that we'll open it up for everybody to discuss. Okay? So.
Oh, sorry. We need an AI in charge of this machine. Go back to Zoom. No, I'm going to go back to my chair. Oh, I have to stop share. That's my problem. How do I stop share? Oh, okay. Yeah. Cheers. Yeah. Okay, we're on the wrong view. Oh, okay. I'm getting out of this.
Stand by, everybody out there.
Yeah. Except for gumption.
Thank you, Paul, and Lilith, and all of the presenters there. Could you please send your slide decks to either me or Art Hunter so that we could include those when we process this video? We didn't see the slides from Paul, and I'm hoping that Lilith will advance his slides or be able to advance his slides as we go. Would that be possible?
Did you not see mine?
No, all we saw was your opening slide.
Additionally, there is a very, very fuzzy sound coming from that computer. Perhaps if Lalit speaks into his computer, we'll have a clearer sound. Sound was extraordinarily fuzzy.
You might use a phone to connect it to Zoom and use it as a microphone because the quality of the sound would be definitely better.
Yeah, we're in a public library and we're using their system.
Whatever
You know why
Paul speaks, it's very fuzzy.
Let's go to full screen. Let's go to this. I want to close somehow.
So it's that computer that he's speaking into that's fuzzy.
It's, yeah. So we'll send it. If Peter, now you couldn't see
I
that.
see it at all.
Yeah, we will send the slides.
Yeah, quite easily.
Sorry about this.
Okay, well, we'll try this again. Start share. Your screen sharing. Stop share. Share. Today's presentation is at the bottom. Actually, you share those. Share screen. Yeah, they should be seeing this. Yeah, now they should. Can you see it all now? Everybody out there?
Yes, we can see it, but it is not in slide mode.
Okay, well, that's easy. We'll put it in slide mode.
Maybe that's what it said.
I had it
You
in
need to
slide.
click on slideshow.
Click on slideshow.
Can you see?
It's still not full screen.
Hello, can you see it?
We
It's
can
still
see it.
not. It's
but it's-
still not full screen. You need to click slideshow.
Maybe they shared some just the window, not the whole.
Yeah, but it should still work if you click on slideshow, I think.
Yes, it should.
Just do it manually.
It will.
Oh, you can do it down
Yes.
the bottom. Yeah.
Okay.
I can do it down the
Okay.
bottom.
Let's do that.
I don't know what's wrong.
They need to see it.
Okay, so let's see. I'm just going to switch the slide now to see whether did it switch there on that side? Did everyone see it switch?
No, it is still just on your first screen and it's not in slideshow.
Okay, so if you bear just a moment, let's try it again.
You can always turn the camera around so you won't.
Yes, that's another thing.
Yeah.
No, not at all. When I go share, yeah, I check it out. Okay, can you see the slides now?
Yes, now it's different because you
Okay, great.
shared something else.
Okay, did you see the slide move?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, I think we got it now. Yes, yes. All right, so that's what Compton said. If you read, remember reading Then the art of motorcycle maintenance and technology? Yeah. And, I don't want to, sort of denigrate our generation, but I'm so glad that my son is still at home. He was knock on his door so many times, and we dread the time he's going to move out because my business is going to suffer when I get stuck. Paper towel roll, it'll be okay. That's right. Yes, exactly. So thank you very much. I think Paul, you laid out the sort of the ethical part of AI, and you also explained really well the different types of AI that's coming at us. And as you know, it's all very confusing. So I want to approach AI from the point of view of I call it AI for power with responsibility and wisdom. So I come from the East, and I'm a hybrid. I grew up in a Catholic neighborhood in Sri Lanka in a Buddhist home. So I've had many influences and moved to Canada when I was 14 years old. So my worldview is essentially coming from all of these different experiences that I've had. So I look at technology from a point of view of the root causes of why we are where we are right now in terms of the predicaments that we face right now. We have an existential crisis, and we seem to be speeding at, say, 60 kilometers an hour towards a cliff. But what AI seems to be doing is to kind of speed that up. We're going at 120 kilometers an hour at the cliff right now. And we seem to not have the power, all of us as citizens, as individuals, to stem that, because the power is concentrated among a few right now. So this is what we're seeing. So how do we deal with this situation? So this is what I want to address from a historical, from a spiritual, and now there's neuroscience also to inform us of why we are thinking the way we are thinking, because there's technology appearing to us. So I'm going to kind of do a hodgepodge of looking at this, and also from a spiritual grounding through the practice that I also have in mindfulness. So
So the genial Margaret Atwood says the vampires are aristocrats and landowners with fancy outfits and capes, and Frankenstein monster is a creature of enlightenment. So I want to just go a little bit into the last 500 years of development, which has been Western-centric, European and North American-centric. But we know that history goes before that, for at least 5,000 years, we know from the civilizations that have been out there, and that history we know. But we also know that we've been around as Homo sapiens for 200,000 years, and we've risen and fallen. So I'm wondering whether we haven't learned those lessons of why we fell the last time before the sort of the known history of, say, 5,000 years. And I also look at this from an East and West point of view too, because there is a division between East and West right now in our thinking processes, because of the way the world evolved after the colonization. And I'm an Anglicized Sri Lankan, and in Sri Lanka went through a horrible war because us Anglicized Sri Lankans took over from the colonists and continued the same trajectory. So we had civil wars, we had insurgencies where people didn't have those opportunities just because they couldn't sing an Irish song. You know, Irish are just smiling. You know, I played rugby club. So we kind of took over the sort of what the colonists left behind in Sri Lanka, India, those countries. But what also happened was I started a solar energy business, which in Sri Lanka, which sold systems to rural people. That's when I really learned about a different culture, even within the country that I was born in terms of people from the land, people from the soil. And it's a completely different culture and a mindset. And it's aligned with the indigenous mindset here too. So this is what I want to sort of inquire into today. Can we come together, not to denigrate the Western culture? We are enjoying the heat here. We enjoy all the nice things that we have, the food supply. I can eat an apple in the winter here. So all of those things are because of that trajectory. But can we see ourselves sort of going into a kind of a spiritual side of things to marry the East and the West and the indigenous philosophies together? Can we find some middle ground is what I'm inquiring about. And I believe we can, and that's why I'm presenting this. So I trust you can see this. So we have got ourselves into a bit of a mess, as you can see. If you are following the doomsday clock, which was established in 1947, we had 7 minutes because the nuclear race started then with the Cold War. And then in 1991, we went up to 17 minutes when the USSR opened its, broke down the walls and created a unipolar world. We thought everything's going to be fine. But we also know that in 1963, with the Bay of Pigs invasion and the Cuban crisis, we went down to 2 minutes, and it was because the two people from the humanity in Khrushchev and Kennedy decided that, through backroom channels that they discussed and decided that they're going to now, stop this battle, which was egged on by the Hawks. And they thought that they'll destroy their beautiful nature that they were sitting in. Luckily, JFK was in Hyannisport and Khrushchev was in his dacha in the countryside. We thought that we're going to destroy all this now. And that's what saved us from that 2 minutes. So we went up to 17 minutes, but today we're 89 seconds to now. And we are in dire straits when you think about it right now. Even though we don't quite feel it as us as individuals, it was 90 seconds last year. It has gone down to 89 seconds. So it's not only nuclear, it's climate, it's pandemic threats, and all of that coming together has brought us down to this level of us inheriting ourselves. So are we going to kind of stand by and watch this? I don't know. And that's what we want to just look at. So I kind of tried to create this, and I couldn't find my son to help me with this. I kind of looked at this I'm also looking at the latest neuroscience that is coming from people like Gilbert Taylor, who is a Harvard neuroscientist who had a stroke. You know her from My Stroke of Insight. And Ian McGilchrist, the Scottish neuroscientist, coming up with amazing, amazing pieces of the left and the right hemisphere. Not from a pop psychology point of view of left is an accountant, the right is an artist. No, left and the right brain are separate. They attend to the same things differently. So the left hemisphere of the brain is quick, gets things done, grasps things because it's a survival mode. It's stuck on ideology. It's short-term thinking, takes shortcuts. It doesn't care about stepping over people, stepping on people to get the job done. Objective-oriented. Whereas if you overcome and move over from the corpus callosum to the other side, the right hemisphere will attend to the same thing in a different way. So it's really exciting to listen to this, and people like Jill Botticelli and Will McGilchrist talking about East and Western practices coming together to be able to transcend the left hemisphere of the brain, which is trapping us in a place of fear, because that's the narrative that's out there. And then the right hemisphere is to put things in context, get out and put things in perspective and realize, look, no, we have agency to act. We have still time to act. So the left is about power. It's utilitarian. It's about materialism. So what artificial intelligence does is that we know with wealth, it's compounding, right? And if you're going to have an extra amount of money, we put it, and then we can compound it. And this is where the concentration of wealth has happened, as we know, and it has compounded. But with artificial intelligence, it's going to be uber compounded. And the people who have money, and we know through the pandemic how the oligarchs and the business communities, tech industries amassed a huge amount, like 30, 40, 50% more wealth was accumulated during that time alone. Whereas the small mom and pop shops, the high streets were all destroyed. And the wealth the gap just increased. So this is what AI can do if you don't have wisdom and responsibility in working with AI. And that's the left hemisphere. So right side is wisdom, values, as Paul also pointed out. And spirituality is a word that everybody is scared to even bring up. I work with organizations, business organizations. The moment I mention the word spirituality, they go, we don't want to talk about that. I mean, we are spiritual human beings. So I just power my way through these organizations. and nobody has thrown me out. Even Department of Defense, they don't throw me out because I say to them, I said, what does it mean to you? This word of spirituality scares me so much. And then they say it's kind of miracle of life, purpose and meaning. So then I asked them, I said, do you think a lack of that is creating all the problems that you're facing right now? And then the penny drops. So it's how do we transcend the left hemisphere to get to the right hemisphere and become whole brain to really deal with our existential problems. So this is what I want to look at. So what has really happened right now is we have gone on this trajectory in the last 500 years, I would say, and more so in the last 150 years. Technocrats, bureaucrats running the show and in the service of a few people who own businesses, and we have created ourselves a wicked problem. And it is extremely difficult to solve. And it's complex and interconnected in nature. And we call it radical uncertainty, wicked problems. Now the business community, McKinsey calls it, what do you call that now? Permacrisis. And they're using words now and accepting the fact that because we have been on the notion that we can find perfect solutions. When Rex Tillerson was asked about climate change as a chairman of Exxon, he said we can engineer our way through our solutions. So everything's about engineering our way. Zero COVID, zero carbon. We can't. There's no way as long as we live on this earth and there's entropy, there's no way we can find zero, right? So how do we find that middle ground? And that's our challenge. And John Gordon sadly is not here today, but this is a tribute to John. John, Gabriela, and Paul and I, we have amazing conversations. And last week we were at Life of Pi, and we were so animated that we were wondering whether people would get up and leave. But so John said, truth is dead, long live honesty. And when you think about it right now, right? the truth is controlled by whoever has the power, whoever has the wealth. But honesty is a personal thing. We can still be honest to ourselves and then find the grounding at an individual level. Ethics are dead. Paul talked about ethics, the importance of AI ethics, but again, even ethics are manipulated by, or what is right and wrong is manipulated by the people who have the power. Right now with AI, whoever is now dictating that medium in terms of censoring people, we have seen that censorship coming on, and all of those things are what's creating now the whole ethical dilemmas that we're facing right now. But long live morality, because we do have a moral compass within us that we can work with. So that's what it's a personal responsibility that then all of us individuals we need to come together with. So getting to the root causes, this is my own opinion of all this, right? So I'm looking forward to a great conversation. So we know that the Great Separation sort of happened in the 1500s because we know that the church dominated the world, and when Galileo and Giordano Bruno got burnt at the stake in 1600 because they brought in scientific thought, and Galileo was put in prison in 1633. Copernicus was scared to even put out his thesis of the heliocentric universe. So we know that there was a battle between the scientists and the church happening in the West, and that then a truce, I believe, was. I mean, this is my own thinking from reading history. So people like Descartes and people like that separated and called it a truce to the church and said, look, let us go on this trajectory with the science and technology. You guys take care of the church and spirituality on this side, and we don't interfere with each other. And this is the world that we have come to right now. So we can develop technologies that can destroy us without thinking about the consequences, right? So we know the Bible is a compilation of various stories. Various people contributed to it, but it's indisputable. But this is one of the things that in Genesis King James Version, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over fish, the sea, over fowl of the air, and over cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon this earth. So imagine a scientist who is guided by this and saying, you know what? We have been given permission. So cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. So separated the mind and the body. So we have those two separate ways that we have gone through. And Bacon, who contributed so importantly to science, he mentioned the gentle guidance over nature's course. They have the power to conquer and subdue her, to shake her to her foundations. So here's a separation of the mind and the body that we are now dealing with, which is creating, I believe, the predicaments, the existential crisis, because we are not coming together to figure this out. So here we are. The clock changed everything: conformity, uniformity, regimentation. So all of that informality, and then we put fences around land, and then this is my land, and that's how the colonization. There's an amazing book called The Empire of Guns, which follows the evolution of the gun and colonization. And ironically, it was a Quaker from Birmingham called the Galton family, and used other Quaker businesses like the Lloyd's Bank and Barclays Bank to perpetuate. And his justification when he was pulled up by the Quakers, fellow Quakers in Birmingham, was he was serving Great Britain, and then the consumerism starts from there. So it's about then creating from the early 1900s a consumerist culture, which is followed by this, so when we go to the root causes, when you see the history of this, you can then unravel it. So here's Ed Bernays, who is Sigmund Freud's nephew, who wrote a book called Propaganda. He set up office in Madison Avenue and worked with the likes of the Hearst family and Henry Lewis of Time magazine in the whole PR business and manipulation of organized habits and opinions, and was able to create public relations and advertising and a consumer economy based on that. And then on top of that, the legal license to operate. Now, nobody talks about this. The corporation was established by the VOC, the Dutch East India Company, then the British East India Company, and then it was continued. And really, for a company, The only responsibility they have is to make profit for the stockholders, right? And that's where it is at. And we take away those boundaries, profit motive becomes greed, right? So we have to think about the folly of certainty, and that we have created on the left hemisphere that we need to now question. And this is a question that is being asked. Enlightenment, all the good things that came with it, but has it destroyed our morality? Created selfish individualism, cultural imperialism. So has meaning to life been taken away by that? And that's what we've seen in the last 20 years of social media. And we were warned, right? We were warned by people who built these systems about the military-industrial complex. And Joe Biden, before he left office, he said, today oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence. And the reality really threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms. So they actually say something before they go out of office. So Gandhi came up with this whole notion of trusteeship. So a company like Tata, which now is a global company, is 66% owned by a trust. So the family does not have access to it. And that trust is what has done so much of philanthropy in India now globally to live Gandhi's value of trusteeship. So I believe that we need to think about how the East and the West can meet and find common ground. So for me, my basic foundational teaching was from the Buddhist teacher was life is suffering and unsatisfactory. Dukkha it was called. Life is uncertain and impermanent. Anatta anicca is called. And there is no such thing called self, which has been difficult for me to realize, but it has been difficult. So just a couple of more slides, and I'll just finish up. So there's a practice that I'm presenting. I was taught the meditation practice. Basically, the meditation practice is about understanding my oneness with nature, because when I was taught to meditate, I was asked to see where that breath is coming from. It comes from the tree and the soil. Where does my breath go on? So that gave me unwavering assurance that I am one with nature. And it's people like H.G. Wells and Rabindranath Tagore, which talked about how we can come together as the East and the West. And here we are. Maslow actually learned his craft in a Blackfoot community. It's about self-actualization. And then the critique on this is Abraham Maslow himself talked about it. It's interpsychic individualist psychology without reference to other people and social conditions is not adequate, he said. So John Milton said mind of its own. So we have the power of the mind to change things. So we can come together with the breath, connect the mind and the body. And people like Jill Bolte-Taylor, I spoke about her, and I really recommend this book, Whole Brain Living, where she talks about bringing these ancient processes together, bringing the right and the left and the right hemisphere together to become whole brain, and to find the eternal force. So this is Ian McGilchrist. Left hemisphere is fear brain, right hemisphere is fearless, is what he says. I really invite you to follow him. He has a channel called Channel McGilchrist, where he has incredible presentations. So virtue and mindfulness, and the brain regulates itself. And this is materialism. We can change, we can find our way out of this, especially when we become whole brain. And this is Rudyard Kipling's work. And finally, one more slide.
Yeah.
And,
have to,
yes.
Yeah.
And this is Thich Nhat Hanh talking about Mother Earth and our oneness with nature. And finally, I want to, Mo Gaudat is a former CEO of Google X, and this is what he says about AI. He says, instead of containing them and enslaving them, we should be aiming higher. We should aim not to need to contain them at all. Best way to raise wonderful children is to be a wonderful parent. So that's me. Sorry, I took a little longer than that, and I get very passionate about this. And thank you for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Lalit. Okay. Well, sorry. So this was quite amazing. We went through a spirituality teaching here, and we learned a lot. but I think we have to move on to the AI governance, which is our last presentation, and then we will have discussion. So Peter, if you don't mind, and yours is going to be more like 10, 15 minutes, right?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? All right. So you want to come over here? Yeah.
Just a second, got to share you first.
Sorry, this is a very organic presentation with little breaks here and there.
Screen one.
Everything, everywhere, all at once.
Everything, exactly. That's a very good.
Okay, share screen there. Right now.
And so
We will go. And we can actually, even after, we can carry on.
Okay, just close mine. Yeah. Okay, I just want to get this. That's pretty well.
Right now, we're talking about the weather, whether we're going to get freezing.
So in wisdom, Frankenstein Moment.
They said the internet doesn't work. But now they're checking.
Know where it is.
He has it on.
Yeah, I've got it here.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, can everybody see that this time?
We can see it, but it needs to be in slideshow mode. Okay.
Thing of beauty. Just move one to see there. Okay, go one. Did you see it move? Did it move?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know why mine didn't.
So who's going to?
The universe didn't love me. I can either change it. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sure. You could use the charger.
Well, while I get a chair to get settled here, I'll introduce myself. Thank you very much for inviting me to participate in this panel group, I guess, of presentations and then discussions. I enjoy K-Core activities. As some of you know, I've been active in K-Core for many years, but only recently have become a member, actually, in the last couple of years. Maybe I should begin, given the conversations we've had so far, that I'm probably the only one in the room who can say that I've been involved in AI for over 40 years. So I do have a little experience in the sense of where it's come from, and I spent a lot of my time dealing with where is it going. And let's also begin by what we've been talking about, both of previous speakers. We're talking about a very narrow aspect of AI. The current part of AI that's really hot is natural language processing. But that is only one aspect of AI. If you think about what AI is about, it's about trying to understand originally the mind, the human mind. And that human mind interacts with reality through our senses. So AI deals with hearing, speaking, feeling, as in touching things, seeing things. All this stuff is AI. We're just hearing about the natural language part of it right now. But robots, especially the autonomous ones, like cars are coming, robotic cars, these are going to include other aspects of AI. So you're just getting the very beginnings of this revolution. And the other thing to think about is that innovation has shifted fundamentally in recent years from inventing things out of atoms to inventing things that are massless, frictionless, and can be instantly transmitted anywhere in the world. That's software. The biggest companies in the world are software companies. It's a whole new way of adding to human value. So that's just a preamble on what I was listening to earlier. I would also suggest that ethics, and I'm involved in ethics, as you can see here. I serve on a global IEEE. The IEEE is it's the largest technical organization in the world. It is an engineering organization, and they've recently struck a working group. It's not a committee yet; it's a working group that deals with AI and ethics. I'm advocating that one of the things we need to do. This is just brand new. We've only had 2 meetings, and the last meeting we had 45 countries participate. So I believe that, and this was brought up with your East-West thing too, that what's really at the core of looking at how to govern AI is going to be about integrity. Integrity is in your anima. Somebody in this room falls over, we're all going to go in hell. That's our integrity. Our ethics is reflected, our integrity is reflected through ethics, but ethics is cultural. At least in my view, strongly, it's cultural, as presented East and West. For example, and I'm just preambling because we have the time, John gave us a few more minutes each, that think about an autonomous vehicle that's going down a road and it's going to have to hit, this is a scenario, it's going to hit one of 2 people. One is an adult and one is a child. How does the AI know which one to hit? Or is it just random? Well, in the East, which one would it hit? I know you know. No, the child. The child's an empty bucket. The adult is wisdom. In the West, which one would it hit? That's ethics. That's a cultural form of the ethics of the parts of the world. So how does AI know to make those differences? That's why I argue we have to look at this lens, the lens of integrity. We all either have it or don't. Simple as that. So I'll get into that a little further when we start speaking here. So let me get into the presentation. I hope I'm loud enough. Don't hurt people's ears here. But I'll have a few opening remarks beyond what I just said. And then we'll look into artificial intelligence and a case for governance. And I'm going to do 3 parts to that. These are all slides. Just a few slides. Setting the stage, which I'll explain in more detail when I set that stage. And then the big concerns about the rise of AI. And again, I'm talking about the narrow aspect. This is natural language processing, right? Generative artificial intelligence. Well, some hear about super intelligence, such as the Hollywood version, which has created 2 things. And, Hollywood has done 2 things that have really been detrimental to the advancement of technology in some respects. It has created all kinds of myths about the fear of radiation because of nuclear war and, nuclear reactors exploding in your neighborhood. So that hasn't helped, like the China syndrome, which is a really well-done movie, but it certainly put a lot of people off on wanting to have nuclear power in their backyard. And, the Terminator and those sorts of Matrix, these have done the same thing to AI. These are super intelligent things that control humanity. So that's not AI, and that's not the way AI is today, and it's not the way nuclear power and nuclear energy is today. But nonetheless, we have these step things that have affected the general public through hardware. So the critical things I want to talk about are about how we need to deal with the issues of governance of AI, and then some topics for discussion. And I've provided in my deck about a dozen references that are op-eds on AI that I've written myself and or with my colleague Ellie Flaherty. I'll tell you more about him if you're interested. He's a highly regarded individual in this world we're talking about. So, next slide. I'm in charge. So my opening remarks. Well, first of all, I believe that AI raises a plethora of value issues. A very reason this committee exists. It poses unparalleled opportunity if it is safely controlled. And note I've got control in quotation marks, because I don't mean that there's some central body that says this and that. It's like international standards. We have every country in the world, every advanced, and I mean not advanced either, every country that deals with development of technologies and communications of any sort has a national standards organization. The global standards organizations meet under an umbrella, and they negotiate with each other and agree on a global standard. So this is what I'm talking about here in terms of controls. It's going to be built up over time. And right now, there's no control whatsoever. There's some guidelines. That's about it. We'll talk more about that. However, society will be the biggest loser if we don't get control in the near term, because AI is dual use, especially natural language processing. Because how we communicate and how you say things and who says what to who, and the way we built our, at least in the Western and much of even the Eastern culture, who's in charge. So all of that can be disrupted by AI in the form of malware and so on. We'll talk about. So the other final point I want to talk about is that society being the biggest loser, as I mentioned, if we don't get this control. And organizations at nearly all scale are already embracing AI. And so we're working with something in the wild, if you like in the North American context, the Wild West. We're in the Wild West of AI. There's no controls right now. And there's some other things that are really seriously happening, because the Trump administration is removing all control on AI right now. I'll get into that later, and maybe more for our conversation when we talk. So here's the AI and case for governance. So the stage. Well, first of all, the optimistic view of AI's future is that it will have a tremendous positive impact on global affairs in the sense of economy, education, and capabilities of all sorts. And in the monetary sense, trillions of dollars to the world's GDP. However, and this is where I specialize my time in these op-eds, as you'll see later, is in the however stuff. It's disruptive in both technical and societal context. You mentioned hallucinations, or maybe it was mentioned twice. Hallucinations have been in AI since the very beginning. When the first natural language processing was being done in the 1970s, if you could get a sentence that didn't hallucinate, you were getting progress. So we've got a long way from that. Hallucination is still possible, but standards are being developed and tests of how these systems work that will help reduce that kind of thing. There's even a concept called unlearning, which is being applied to large language models. In other words, there's things they don't need to know in order to link to other things, so you won't have hallucination. It's a technical issue, but that's why I said it right here a few moments ago that AI is disruptive technically and socially. The other thing is it's dual use. And you know what I mean by that? It's both for good and for bad. And the bad is the concern is that, because it's in the wild, it's already there, it's on billions of phones, you can access it. Well, that many people with trustworthy integrity in the world, everyone is going to use this in a proper way? I suspect not. And so we're really in that's why I say we need some rules, some control sooner than later. And currently, AI, as the natural language stuff, is driving geopolitics. I mean, look at the competition between China and America, or between Europe and, North America and China. I mean, geopolitics is at stake here, and it's doing billions and billions, and whatever you want to currency measure, we'll call it dollars, are being poured in with all this no rules yet. So this is kind of interesting dynamic. So AI can, and the other most important thing that I'm concerned about because of the dual use is the bottom bullet. And AI can manipulate the human mind at the level of the individual an organization, a community, a nation, a whole society. And it's the first technology to have that capability. Yes, we've had radio, television, newspapers, but you've had choices. But now we've got this capability where it can actually be channeled in such a way that whatever social circle you're in, and your view, your narrow channel is amplified. So we got to watch out for these sorts of things. So here's some of the big concerns. AI-enabled applications have the potential for societal disruption, creating the ability to spread misinformation and disinformation. And let's make this distinction if you don't know the difference. Misinformation is information that basically is like lying to you, but it's not going to hurt you. Whereas disinformation is lying to you and it's designed to hurt you. In other words, for example, disinformation convincing you that you need to donate money to some relative that's stranded in some city and so on. That's to get money. That's disinformation. Whereas much of the geopolitical campaigning or political campaigning where there's a bias of some sort, that's misinformation. There's quite a big difference. One is about, basically white lies, and the other is about injury. So such online behavior can lead to the erosion of trust and the credibility in various contexts. And I list those. I need not read them. But you can appreciate it. This is where we're now getting all these social silos, whether it's on social media or beyond, because you even get now, clubs and groups of people that sit together or communicate. I mean, you go to a public place these days, a restaurant, a bar, people sit at a table, they don't talk to each other, they're all on their device. And they're texting each other, but they're not talking to each other. I mean, the world is changing dramatically because of technology, and we're not even realizing this underpinning social change. I mean, some of us are, but those who are practicing are. And it's also, and that's one of the reasons I brought this here, we're still lonely at work. This doesn't mean work at the office. It means work at home as well. And this is the Harvard Business Review for November, December. I serve on the Harvard Business Review Advisory Council, and they asked me to choose the cover for this particular magazine, this particular issue. And this is the cover of the show. By choice. Right. Where things stand. Right. So anyway, that's about getting loneliness, and we're seeing more and more loneliness. It's actually emerging significantly in China, especially among young men who are locking themselves away from their families and their friends. And there's a serious amount of social science. I advocate very strongly the need for social science, more social science in this whole field. So that's the point I'm making with those bottom line of all those different implications. AI and governance issues. AI enormously disrupt the state, a corporation, society, and the people opportunity by all of these different things you can read about. You've heard of it, right? Right. Each firm specializes in financial fraud detection using AI. This firm has been selected by the World Economic Forum as a technology leader in that field. He also, by the way, serves on the Canadian National AI Policy Advisory Committee for the Government of Canada. So we now also have these very transforming warfare and terrorism. Somebody did mention a bit about that earlier. Meanwhile, governments, as I said, are pouring billions of dollars into these national strategies. And in the case of the U.S., it's abandoning its rules that is already put in place. There's an international agreement that was reached at Bletchley Park in 2023 by global leaders, many, not every country, of course, but many of the major countries. And it was agreed that they would create AI Safety Institute. Canada just announced its AI Safety Institute in mid-summer, last summer. When Trump moved into office a second time, he disbanded the US AI Safety Institute. No longer exists. And they're purging many of the AI experts from the U.S. government through the, I call it doggy, as opposed to Doge, but I call it doggy. And that's actually because Musk has his own AI company. He was one of the founders of OpenAI, but he had a falling out with the Altman, who's the CEO and chairman. Altman is the CEO. So anyway, there's a lot of things that are in there in terms of individuals who play a pivotal role in making things happen. So here are some of the critical needs and some topics for discussion, basically my last slide. Global cooperation to develop and implement guardrails. We do have guardrails in some countries. Canada was one of the first to introduce guardrails. Regulations, they're coming. I'll point out in the black text below about that. Developers, I would argue that those who develop these large, complex models that have these profound implications to society, they should have certain level of certification, like a brain surgeon. None of us, unless you're a brain surgeon, are going to do a brain surgery. And you can say, I'm a brain surgeon and I'll cut you open. What do you know about what you're doing? Well, this is the same thing. We need some form of certification for developers. Also, I think we need some kind of certification for those who use these technologies to control critical infrastructure. Pipelines, transmission facilities are also. So there's no such thing yet. But my op-eds that I write with Ellie and others I write are all about trying to enhance those, make those possible. So the current and domestic international rules of governance of AI are nascent. There is actually only one known, to my knowledge, only one known that transcends more than one country, and that's in the EU, and it was passed last May, and it's called the EU AI Act, but it doesn't come into effect until 2026. So it's still over a year away before it comes into effect. However, I might point out that just as you can see, March the 4th, 2025, the Canadian government launched its first ever artificial intelligence strategy for the federal public service. And this is what is the first in the world, if not the first in the world. We had expected Singapore. And mentioning about the AI Safety Network, the Global AI Safety Network, Canada recently joined and the U.S. just recently decommissioned itself. So here's some supporting materials. I provided the web links. All of this is available online and free access. These are published in basically two sources. The Research Money, which is a newsletter that's been around since the 1980s. The name is Research Money, so it follows the money of research in Canada and the people in addition. And the other is the Center for International Governance Innovation, which is a think tank that's in Waterloo, founded by Jim Basile, one of the principals who started the BlackBerry, or what is originally called RIM, Research in Motion, and has BlackBerry. And that company is doing quite well in the not in the smartphone area. There was a company they bought that was actually from Ottawa that has a operating system that is being embraced in the autonomous vehicle business. So it has a huge following in the major corporations developing, and small startups that are developing autonomous vehicles or autonomous robots. So that's just some reference material if you're interested. And our latest op-ed that will be published on the 12th of this month is on the AI gold rush is on. Where's the gold? And this was a AI piece of art I generated 2 days ago to illustrate with our publication about that particular op-ed. And of course, the point is, yes, and it comes back to my discussion about we're just really sampling things right now. So they're finding nuggets. We know that the nuggets are probably coming from upstream, but where's the vein? So this is the metaphor, and actually the op-ed uses the Klondike Gold Rush as a metaphor several times through the op-ed as to where AI is at today. So those are my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, and here are some of my affiliations. I'm on the IEEE USA Artificial Intelligence Policy Committee. That is a privilege. I'm the only foreign member of that committee. I frequently get asked to comment on draft legislation from the White House, the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and from both houses of Congress. I've even had personal compliments from a senator who was the chair of a committee for one of the bills they were trying to develop on the regulation of AI algorithms. And I pointed out that they had a gross error, like a really gross error in their draft bill. I also am associated with a number of other groups that you can see here. I might just point out something you may not be aware of, but probably all of, or most locally anyway, would have heard of, is the Big and Egg Breakfast Club. That is sponsored by the Partnership Group for Science and Engineering, which specializes and inwardly focuses specifically on all of the members of Parliament. And we support at their request and bring to their attention matters related to science and engineering. And not the biosciences, bioscience, yes, but not medical science. So that's just some of my affiliations. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay.
All right.
So, I hope you continue to advise the White House.
Well, if I may, I'll tell you, I think there's two challenges
They
from
need
the
it.
organizations I'm involved in. One is obviously the White House, yes. And the other is that Polyam is elected.
Oh, yes.
We have a lot of interesting no opinion type policy positions, for example.
So
The two issues that are really at the center of everything we've been talking about today, on every slide, there are two major poly crises. Some of you heard me talk about the environmental poly crisis, the climate crisis. But the other poly crisis is shaping the guys out here. Governance poly crisis. And the governance poly crisis is, like I'm saying, talking to these things, while the rest of the world is trying to do these things. Even China, I was China a while. I've been involved in many op-eds I've written on China's technology. I've lived in China. My first trip to China was, my first invitation to China was 1975. So, and I've lived there. I've lived in Shanghai also as an advisor. I got to step that. So, China, 18 months ago, sorry, they were large planes. This was something I found to be absolutely remarkable. They issued it for public comment from anywhere in the world. They didn't issue it saying, this is the rule. They issued it to get opinion, refine it, because China wants to help lead the world in guiding AI.
Peter, thanks very much. We just need to let the others have let's have a conversation. I'm afraid we actually lost a few from the internet. Of course, I believe. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So we start with a few from okay, David.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
We'll have to. Yeah.
I made a comment during the division between, or the pause between about this is everything everywhere all at once.
Yes.
This has been an enormous amount of input, which has been extremely well. It's if I reflections or questions. The first is to individuals who may be suspicious, like I am, that we will not get sufficient guardrails quickly, and there are some dangers coming down the pike for individuals. So in our family, for example, we have created a phrase such as Robert Frost is a bad poet. And only our family members know this phrase, so that when AI gets so good that I see a picture of my daughter appealing for help with my daughter's voice that I can't distinguish, the first response I will give is, what is the phrase? And if they do not have that phrase, we will disconnect. So I suggest that for anyone as a cautionary principle to think about. The second reflection came with your comment about ethics and integrity. And we talk about an autonomous car and what gets built in. And I thought to myself, east and west, I'm driving down the road. There may be a big difference if I suddenly spot that it's my daughter, my young daughter, or my young granddaughter versus an old man that I've never met before and don't know. Or if I know he's an abysmal criminal. So I really want to be able to take charge of that. And it seems to me that my integrity, if I look at my whole life, I can't say I have integrity or I don't. I'm really proud of a few moments where I think integrity really rules. But there are moments that I'm ashamed of that I don't think integrity held the day and some other value, whether it was greed or fear or something entered in. So it was really to reflect back to you in a moment, if you wish. I don't see this notion of integrity as an absolute, but so much as a relative and culturally changing value. And to the first presenter, I thought that was the clearest presentation I had heard about the points you were making. You said it's up to the user at some points. And I thought, is it not possible to program in, to code it in so that you must start by saying, I'm asking a question with international law in mind or with humanitarian values of the following. In other words, so that it gets programmed into the AI system so that if I ask a question without those values, that the AI will say, I can't answer unless you ask it correctly. And that leads me to think about who has access to changing these codes. I know right now on chat, GPT, there's certain things they'll say, I can't draw a picture of a woman in a skimpy bikini. You know, like they will say, I won't do that. So then if you say, can you draw a picture of someone wearing a lovely bathing suit? They will do that. They end up drawing a picture of a woman in a skimpy bikini. So it's a question of who can change the codes themselves. So those are my three comments.
Thank you. I don't know if we anybody want to answer. I would also like to give voice to some people who are online still, because we were here in the room, but I think some people online would need to. Anyone? I think Art gave. Art, did you have a question? Art, you're not there. Okay. Art, just 1 second. Okay, he's not. Okay, Robert, you're there. There it is, Art. Okay, do you want to go ahead and ask a question or make a comment? I think we're on chat.
Okay, I can make a comment. I guess the one comment I wanted to make is that bad people have existed well before computers and software and everything associated with AI. And the mere fact that we now have AI that bad people can use, don't blame the technology. You know, it is the bad people themselves that are taking and misusing the technology. I think the classic example, as I've pointed out in chat, is the nuclear technology. I mean, there's dual use, and depends on your code of ethics as to whether it's good or bad. The same thing goes with AI. I agree that there should be some guardrails, by all means. I mean, anybody who is foolish enough to go off and connect the output from some AI software to hit the World War III nuclear holocaust red button, you know, is crazy. You don't do that. You don't connect something to a piece of software that's going to go off and generate potentially some harm. But there's bad people out there, and they will do exactly that. So there has to be guardrails. That's my comment.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks very much, Art. Do you want to answer something?
Just really quick. We tend to get ourselves all involved and wrapped up in the theory of the intractable question. In other words, in ethics, it's called either a right versus right or a wrong versus wrong. No matter what I do, I'm going to cause harm. And then there's a utilitarian response that may kick in to say, how do I minimize this kind of thing? But it also is paralyzing. I've got a heart doctor. I've got two people. Only one's going to survive. What's the answer usually you get from the medical profession? Whichever one is at hand, kind of thing. There has to be some real serious thought about these wrong versus wrong questions.
Thanks very much, Paul. I think we have Bill Tyson wanted to had a comment.
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, yeah. We don't see you, but we can hear you.
Right, my camera isn't working. My question is just whether AI actually creates anything that's qualitatively new. It can greatly speed up communications and can do things like create false videos, but is there anything qualitative that we should be worried about? What should we build into guardrails? Any ideas?
Okay, we'll have Peter. You want to take this one on quickly, though?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I'm not sure what my voting is.
Yeah, just stand there.
I guess I talked to this.
Yeah.
I would say that first of all, a good question. You can think of it in the narrow sense of large language models. What you now can get from them is basically all of codified knowledge. So in a sense, it's a new way of learning because now it's at our fingertips. I mean, you go to all of us, probably many of us went to university, studied at different levels of degrees and different subjects, but now you can get all of that information and more from these large language models. And they're being used for coding software now. I used to be responsible for computer-aided software engineering at a company called Cognos, which we sold to IBM for over $7 billion Canadian. And computer-aided software engineering is a way of trying to specify in a language, in this case English, and convert it into code. Nowadays, the AI tools are so powerful, they have way surpassed what computer-aided software engineering tried to achieve in the 1980s and 90s. Okay. So that's an advancement. I even have a friend who actually did his PhD under the guy who invented the terms artificial intelligence. And he says he's learning, he does very advanced computer programming, says he's learning from ChatGPT, that model.
Super. Thank you. I guess we're going to try to, anybody from the room who wants to make a comment? Samantha, Ted.
Yes, just a very quick comment. The Club of Rome did in November have a session in New York with people from the UN specifically on the question of guardrails and on how it could, on really what would be the components of it. And subsequently, there was an international meeting, I think in Korea, to take this further. So I was just going to ask, were you there?
No, I wasn't at either of those meetings. I wasn't aware of the Common Rome one, but I wasn't aware of the community.
Yeah, well, we put a joint session together with them to really explore exactly the questions that others here are coming up with.
One of the op-eds is about guardrails. You've written more than a year and a half.
Super, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you, Ted. Okay. Anybody? We're going to go online now with, I think, Anitra. Anitra.
Yeah, I was talking about the same session Ted and I organized in New York after Art had been so kind to let Jerry Glenn from the Millennium Project in the United States talk about AI here at the Paycor webinar, then he and one of our members, Tapio Kainanen, put this together for the directors of the General Assembly of the United Nations. So they went to the meeting in South Korea, and then they presented the guardrails that they had made to the Secretary General Gutierrez, who was very receptive to them. And at least within the UN agencies themselves, they are making guardrails and asking the nations that subscribe to, for instance, United Nations food and FAO forestry organizations to all use these same guardrails so that there's not like the train set systems where you go so far on one train and suddenly the gauges are different between the next train track, but everybody has the same bandwidth, so to speak, of the guardrails. And they're trying to have guardrails per subject and internationally so that the nations have the same guardrails, which is important. And it's important to keep the bad guys, as Art said eloquently, the bad guys are out there. So you want to keep the bad guys from sticking their nose in the tent too far. So that was my comment, that actually USACOR has done something toward getting international guardrails in place. And Ted referred to that exact meeting, which was in September at the Conference for the Future at the UN itself. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anitra. Thank you. That's very interesting. Okay, so any other comments on that?
I could do it quickly.
Okay.
We get fixated on the term guardrails. In ethics, guardrails deals with controlling wrongdoing. There's two sides of the coin here. There's controlling wrongdoing and there's building integrity on the other side. So if you can do the building integrity part very well, you're going to, reduce the need for the guardrails. And it certainly does start with an international global regulatory framework, but it has to work down into national institutions, organizations, and people, just on the ethics side. And then the application turns into the AI side. What are you going to do specific to AI?
Right, we have Ted.
I just have a fast comment. It always strikes me that whenever we start talking about these, maybe it comes back to whose values will be the winner. Because when we go into a meeting like the one we had in New York, everybody has a different idea. Everybody has different values. And that's why it comes back to this values group. That how do we, in fact, determine which values we, in fact, respect? And whether or not we are even aware of the important ones that each of the other people around the table have.
Exactly. And that's what Lalit was talking about as well earlier. Right, Lalit? You wanted to add anything on that?
Well, I think fundamentally it is our realization of our oneness with nature that we need to think about fundamentally, and that requires a huge cultural shift for the world. So that starts with educating the young, and I think that's right. Happening now.
Okay, thank you.
I have another comment.
Values. There is certainly the Declaration of Human Rights and Freedoms. Under the guise that all the law is simply the codification of those values of significant impact to society. So the bigger umbrella on values takes precedent. And if the ethic of care is there, we're kind of universal.
Yeah. We'll just have to wait. Bill Tyson, you had some comment. Did you want to come?
Yeah, I also want to make another comment.
All right. Well, I don't know if we can get Bill on.
Well, you'll be able to hear me now. I did make my comment. Thank you. It was a question about the guardrails.
Go ahead.
Okay, for me?
It has been answered, Bill. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, Art.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment on how new AI is. Well, it isn't new. Robots are not new. They've been around. I guess I'm one of the STEM people that was around in the early days when we were building satellites. Now, there's a robot for you that goes off and it's quite autonomous. It does a whole bunch of things all by itself. It's also tethered through a communication link where commands are sent and the robot does as it's told. And those have been around ever since Sputnik. Now, we also have the largest machine in the world. It's called the electricity grid. It connects, lots of generating capacities, nuclear generators right through to hydro dams and solar, wind, and biogas, and it runs through big lines that connect with transformers and transmission lines and distribution lines to every building in the land with meters and monitoring. And do you think it is not full of AI? Oh, you bet. There's a whole bunch of data processing that has been going on, and this has been happening and developing over the past 100 years. And it's still expanding and it's still changing. And, it doesn't, because it's writing its own software, they don't worry about the large language modules and guardrails. They're doing it to improve functionality, to make it work for them. And this happens in big companies all the time. The only thing that is new is the ability to make this available to the general public. And this is where people can start talking to AI and engines and get responses. For example, during this call, I opened my phone up and I said, "Hey Google, is AI without guardrails, is that a problem?" And it came back and gave me about a half-hour dissertation on how it works. And yeah, there's some very useful things that are there. Actually, it just my phone heard me talking, and
without guardrail,
and
AI can
it just started responding again.
It's going to come up.
Anyway, my point here is that AI to me is just absolutely marvelous. It is something that is really going to transform our way of life and make it more easy, make it more comfortable and easier to access knowledge and know-how from other people and to make contributions into that database.
Okay.
I fully support it.
Well, no wonder. I mean, you've been working with it for some time, Art. So now I think there are. There are some other people online. Bill from Newfoundland I think he made some comments. I'm not sure if he wants to have, if he has any questions. I guess we will all have to read the comments.
He brought up the image a few moments ago. This image was
Actually, this is Bill from out there somewhere.
He's not. Are you, Bill?
I was just making comments as I went along rather than asking questions.
All right, so we will have to read the comments then.
Okay. It'll be easier than me trying to read.
Unless you want to make one right now.
Everybody can.
They're a bit bitty. Apologies for that, but if you don't mind reading them, it'll follow along and you'll understand.
Okay. All right, Bill, I guess we will go to Robert from London, England. And he happens to be my brother-in-law. And he's a nuclear physicist. So we'll jump over to Robert. Thank you very much for your patience, Robert.
Before you get there, hi, Robert, this is Bill.
You're muted, Robert.
Okay.
You're muted.
I've unmuted myself. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Am I reasonably clear and not muffled?
Yes. Yeah. You're fine.
Good. Okay. Well, I've made this as a written comment, but I think I might as well make it myself as well. It strikes me that, dare I say it, we don't actually know what we're talking about, and this is the great difficulty. Because what artificial intelligence is maybe in some ways started out to simulate human intelligence, but it's qualitatively different. Apart from anything else, while it's digital rather than analog. We know that human intelligence is basically analog, whereas artificial intelligence is based on digital computing. Anybody disagree with that? You could build a large computer which was analog, and I think there are ways and means of doing that actually, which may be developed. But the point is that I'm trying to make that AI, at least at the moment, is based on digital computers. And what it seems to me that is being discovered progressively are not sort of models of the human brain, but alternative ways of constructing intelligence. And there may be any number of these. And so we don't know at all what we're going to get eventually. One thing I've learned about today through something I saw on YouTube is that there is now a system for bulk text creation by stable diffusion, which has previously only been used, as far as I know, for creating pictures. But it can now apparently create large blocks of coherent text, and much faster than existing large language models. So that's an example of something really completely new, which has no parallel at all with the human brain. I give a historical analogy, and that's the simple idea of the invention of the wheel. The wheel didn't exist in evolved nature at all, or at least not to any significant extent. You might find it a bit in sort of protein operation on a sub-micro scale, but on a large scale, the wheel never evolved. And yet when human beings discovered it, it instantly became a very widespread form of locomotion. It's very efficient, of course, as long as you have roads. So the invention of the wheel led to the creation of roads and so on. So it's very difficult to take any sort of firm position on AI at this stage, any sort of firm position at all, in my view. Oh, really, that's all I wanted to say.
Well, thanks very much, Robert. Yeah, we have a comment on your comment. Peter, yeah, go ahead.
Robert, I totally agree with you. And what I would argue is that what we're seeing today is just the beginning. That's the beginning of AI. All these tools are in their lowest state of being. They're not yet. 5 years from now, it's going to be very different. That's my view, and I do agree. It's going to be evolutionary.
Okay.
And of course, I agree with that as well. Obviously, in 5 years, things are going to be very different.
But if it is a child in development, we have to be mindful of that Frankenstein story.
Right. I think I asked the question before myself, if you don't mind me doing that. I always think that children learn by making mistakes. And in the new ecology, like let's imagine it's going to be a new AI ecology where we're supposed to know everything. There is no mistake. Just imagine, like everything. So how can you learn? If you know everything, how do you learn?
Gabi, if I could make a comment, I think you
can dumb us down. Okay.
I think you learn at a different level.
Sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
I think you learn at a different level. You don't need to have a large number of detailed facts at your direct disposal because you can get at them very easily. So learning takes a different form. Some things, there is the sort of well-known trope that it takes 10,000 hours to learn a new skill. And I think that's broadly true, to become really proficient at it. But AI offers the opportunity to everybody of instantly, effectively having a wide range of skills. So education in the future becomes about learning how to use the wide range of skills that are available to you.
Okay. We have a question here in the in-person room. John.
I have a comment.
A comment.
It's not just children that learn by making mistakes. People of my age, learn by making mistakes.
That is true.
And it's the base of the kind of research I did in biology that you don't expect as a researcher to get it right the first time. So when you just progress and you learn. So
the only way we can progress. Okay. Yes, David.
So sometimes we've been speaking in this conversation as if AI will be a wonderful thing and everything that it can do. But to come back to Layla's comments earlier, if AI contributes to increasing inequality in the world, and the small group that controls power and wealth in the world, then AI becomes a disastrous thing for climate, for communities, and for the vast majority of the world's people, and ultimately creates huge instability. So we need to think about controlling AI in a way that creates less inequality and creates more equality within the world, would be my comment and position.
Thank you. Okay, we see Fernand. Where did you have a comment? In Vancouver. We're from east to west. This is pretty cool today. Okay. You're muted, Fernand.
Going to unmute. Yes. I'm almost embarrassed to bring it down to a lowly experiential level. We are now in the world of AI already in a lot of our interactions with machines. And I am experiencing that the chat lines, which are there to help and which you imagine has a human being behind it, they are now on algorithms. And I found that out as I was trying to change some information in my Uber history. I had some wrong addresses. I could not change it. The system said only the system could change it. And I went into loops and I got the help of someone who's more expert than I am working with this technology. And it was obvious that it was an algorithm that we were talking to, and there was no way to get out of it. So how do we push back or navigate when we're in systems, and I could mention others, where we can't get out to a human person? What's our pushback? And maybe we should organize around that right now.
Yeah, okay. Someone who's Peter, you want to answer?
Big issues in software development, or not development, but is in fact that California, the Silicon Valley, where much of this has started and it spreads around the world in the same context, perhaps without China being an exception. But in fact, it's release whatever you've got. In other words, build fast, let it fail, and fix it. So they're releasing it before they should. They are not testing this stuff thoroughly enough in all the different things we've talked about today. They're just getting it out the door. It causes problems. Hasn't caused too many deaths yet, but some of these chatbots have talked people into killing themselves. So it's a serious problem. And this is where we need not just guardrails, because guardrails are basically voluntary. We need regulation. And we not only need regulation, we need penalties. We need a way to enforce them. We haven't got anywhere near those kinds of issues yet, but it's on the agenda. But it takes time. And of course, various countries are organized in such a way that they all have different values, as we were talking about, or shared values in some cases. But that's a big problem. The industry doesn't test it enough.
Okay. Sorry, we'll just go. I'm sorry, I don't remember you, Richard. Okay, and Richard.
Question for Peter. 7 meeting this summer, and a good part of the agenda is supposed to be on safeguards for AI. The U.S. is part of that. Has this turned the whole thing upside down? Is there possibly anything optimistic going to come out of this?
Well, I think the world, no matter what country it is, the world is looking at America in disarray. And so, may I put my tongue in my cheek and suggest that the President of the United States is a felon in the court system in the United States. And in Canada, we don't normally allow felons into our country. So I would suggest that our government says that he is not welcome. And he said, simple as that. He can send a representative, but he's not welcome.
Are you involved at all with this?
I will not make any further comment.
NATO met without the U.S. the other day. They weren't invited, and G7 can take place and not have the U.S. invited.
Who met?
NATO.
NATO.
Without the U.S. being there.
Right.
That's where they came up with the British threat.
I'm just wondering, Art, if we should continue. Did you stop the recording and then we can continue without? I can't hear.
He's muted. I don't see Art.
You're muted, Art. You're muted.
Okay. Recording is still going. Yes. I'm not quite sure how audible this will be. I can turn it off, and I'll do that now. But I've also got AI Companion running, which will be kind of interesting to see what AI has to say. We were talking about AI.
Okay, Bill Pugsley just got that, so but probably was listening to us every